Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
You're about to hear a revolution in talk radio, Liberty Talk Radio, where the critical thinking will defrag your mind of propaganda-ridden viruses induced by mass media news programming. No BS here, just the facts.
And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Welcome, everyone, to Liberty Talk Radio, America's libertarian voice, broadcasting from our studio in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to around the world. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano, and this is your antidote to popular talk radio. Today, we're pleased to have Mr. Paul Kleinwald as our guest. Paul was born in the late 1940s. I was born in the early 1940s, so I guess I'm his senior in this case. And he was born in New Haven, Connecticut, and now lives in the western hills of Massachusetts. As a teenager, he became involved in the civil rights and anti-war movement, Go Man Go, rejecting the abuse of people here and abroad. He's a student of the financial markets, and for the past 4.5 years has been studying certain aspects of the law to taking possession of our constitutionally guaranteed rights. He weeps for his fellow countrymen and attempts to do what he can to awaken and spur others to seek knowledge and take steps to restore rights guaranteed by Americans in the Constitution, which is constantly under attack. Most recently, he defeated the local district court that fraudulently attempted to convict him of 2 motor vehicle code violations. During our live broadcast, we do invite you to call 646-652-4620. That's 646-652-4620. And if you do call in to ask a question or make a comment, press the 1 button so we can put you on the air so we can interrupt the broadcast. You'll see the little banner with our telephone number popping up from time to time to remind you. We hope you do call in. Paul, welcome to our program.
Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate being given the opportunity to air some of my opinions.
Well, you know, you're one out of the 100,000, maybe even more, that actually stand up to what people perceived as being the law or being what rights we have. And you broke through that barrier and said, no, those laws written by man were not the laws as embedded in the Constitution, and you weren't going to take it anymore. And you fought it, and I guess you fought the law, and the law didn't win this time. You won. Very unusual. Maybe we should have a new record out. You know, I fought the law and the law won. We should have the opposite. We fought the law and Paul won. And can you tell us about that escapade that you went through?
Well, the escapade that basically started when I became more fully aware of the fraud that was being perpetrated on people in this country by the government, central bankers, Wall Street, and as Eisenhower said, the military-industrial complex. And I actually became terrified by what I was learning. And aside from beginning to take whatever measures I thought I could to try to protect myself in whatever limited ways I had, I also started studying as certain aspects of the law. And it was sort of spurred on by some things that I ran into on the internet. And fortunately, we have the internet where so many things can be that we normally would not be exposed to, as well as people's opinions, and the compilation through the power of computing to make comparisons and follow the intricacies of the law, which was created really by the Bar Association, beginning with the establishment of the bar, I believe, like the 12th century in England. This is just an extension of it. And it's the complexity of the law which profits the legal community and hurts the private person. And the law for private people, at least in this country, is actually not very difficult to understand. There are certain basic concepts. And once you begin to see, first of all, the laws of the Constitution are referred to as the law of the land or the common law. We are, as living human beings, are attached to the land. And there's a different system of law that is attached to the law of admiralty, which is like the sea and the air. And there's other laws such as commercial laws. And the people that wrote the Constitution left it to our posterity, which means we inherited it. We inherited the rights in it. And that document is the founding document of our republic. Not our democracy, our republic. And a republic has certain basic tenets that may not be ignored. They must be respected. And unless the people change the laws of that republic. Democracy, they say, oh, we're fighting for democracy. We're trying to spread democracy around the world. We have democratic voting principles, but voting principles by state, local, federal representatives, or the president, or the Department of Justice have no authority to change the Constitution. And the Constitution, as the supreme law of the land, the founding document which allowed the government to come into being. The people fought the British Crown, the king, who was the sovereign, and once the sovereign agreed to leave the people of the land alone, those people became the sovereign. This is each person, and I hate to use the word, but all people born on the soil of the land here in one of the various states is in his own right a sovereign. You could say a sovereign citizen. And there's, propaganda about anybody that uses, tries to identify with a sovereign citizens movement. Well, this is ensconced in the Constitution, and it's been affirmed by the Supreme Court. The people in this country are supposed to be sovereign. And the sovereign people authorize the creation of government under specific circumstances and guidelines in the government's jurisdiction. And many of the things in the government's jurisdiction did not have the right to invade the jurisdiction of the sovereign people. They must swear to uphold and defend the rights of the people. What's happened is they've come up through trickery in law, fraud, assumptions, a contractual system that has ensnared almost everyone in this country to agreeing to give up their constitutional rights for the benefit of contracting with the government. And people say, what the hell are you talking about? I never signed any contract giving up my constitutional rights. Well, you never knowingly did it, but the government assumes you knew you did it, and they have the proof in many documents that you've signed. And those are the government. The government operates under statutes, regulations, and codes. And those statutes and regulations and codes are not human beings of the Constitution of the United States for America. They are for government authorities. All government authorities must abide by those statutes, regulations, and codes. And basically, corporation. The federal government is a corporation, and it's supposed to be limited. Its jurisdiction is supposed to be limited to territories that federal government possesses such as, Puerto Rico, the Marianas, various military bases and enclaves, but they do not have the right to tell people or the states what to do if it violates the Constitution. So they've figured out a way to make people unaware of how they are being ensnared in this commercial benefit, contractual world of being entangled with basically a corporate governance, and that when you're a member of a corporate entity, you must follow the rules of the corporate entity. Otherwise, they discipline you, they fine you, or they fire you. Well, it's not that much different in our corporate governance, which now is not just the federal government, but it is all the state governments as well as all the agencies and contractors with government agencies, such as the IRS. The IRS is a corporation, and I think their headquarters are in Puerto Rico. And my legal advisor that helped me with my own court case, which I represented myself in court, has told me that he's working on getting me the documents from the state of Delaware, which he's already said he has found the incorporation papers of the state of Alaska. State of Alaska is a for-profit corporation of the mind, registered in the state of Delaware. Now, if that doesn't blow somebody's mind, I don't know what does.
Paul, I don't think I even understood that. Paul, could you explain that to me? That went way over my head. I guess I'm just not too smart, but I did not understand that at all.
Well, if you want to become a corporation, you have to file papers.
Right.
With the government, and usually it's within your state. And so you file these corporate papers. Corporations have limited liability, and basically a corporation is an entity. It is actually a fictional, in law, it's a fictional person. I'm a little reluctant sometimes to use the word person because it can mean so many different things. And in the law, a fictional person, a corporation is a person or a fictional person or an entity, and not a necessarily a legitimate government. So we have, if you enter my town, it says entering Great Barrington, incorporated 1785. Well, the town is a corporation. You may think that it's just, a bunch of people working in government offices for, taking care of the town, but they're actually a corporation. They're set up certain ways. And when I say corporation of the mind, a corporation is a creation of the mind of man. It's not a creation of the creator. It's not a human flesh and blood being. It is a fictional creation. So all corporations basically they're legal fictions. And the state of Alaska, and my legal advisor tells me that the state of Alaska doesn't even have its own constitution. It uses the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, which does not have sovereign people. It has subjects, and
right.
that's how the Federal District of Columbia and all federal territories operate under. They have a different system of law of restricted, granted rights. They're granted by government, not by the creator, recognized in the Constitution. So you have a dead, fictional, for-profit entity, state of Alaska, registered in the state of Delaware. It absolutely is nuts.
So it's a company. It's in fact a company. Then just like a corporate, it's a corporation, just like General Motors or Google or whatever. They're just a corporation then. And then everyone who is a resident of Alaska is actually an employee of the state of Alaska, which is really a territory, subject to Washington.
Right.
Do I have that about right, or am I off?
Yeah. So they're a subsidiary of the federal government.
Yeah.
Rather, when this country was created, when we defeated the British, we had separate colonies. Virginia was a colony, Massachusetts was a colony. They were separate entities. Well, when we defeated the British Crown, they became separate independent nations. And they came together in a compact by which they agreed that they would, were going to have a constitution and a central government. But they did not give up their nation. They called states, but they are actually independent nations. And I am a Connecticut national. I can be a national of the United States of America, but I do not wish to be a citizen of the United States. And they are very different things in the law.
So you consider yourself a citizen of the state of Massachusetts?
I live and breathe in Massachusetts, but I am a Connecticut national entitled to travel freely in all of the states.
I see. Oh, you were born in Connecticut, right, Paul?
I was born in Connecticut.
Okay.
Yes. But, from birth, actually my parents engaged in contracts that they didn't understand, which actually, from what other people say, actually sold the product of their business association by a marriage license. You got a license from the state. When you get a license from a government, you're asking for them to give you a privilege, something that you did not have a right to do. You didn't need the government to get married. Okay? You don't need the government to keep and bear arms. You need the government to protect you from harm, and the law of the Constitution is if there's no harm, there's no crime.
Right.
But when you have a license, such as a driver's license, which is actually a commercial license, as a driver is a commercial entity, someone who gets paid to operate a motor vehicle for profit on the public roadways. When you are acting using the license, you are required to obey, just like a military code. If you violate a military code, your shoes aren't polished, your uniform is sloppy, they get to do something to you.
Right.
Well, so you go through a stop sign at a mile an hour, and a cop says you didn't stop. There's no. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. There's no traffic anywhere. And traffic, by the way, is commerce, not just automobiles going up and down the road.
Right.
In law, traffic is commerce, not what we think of in common language. So there's so much we don't know. There's so much we assume we know, just like language. The language of law is a foreign language that resembles English. But the words do not mean the same. We have never, ever been told that in our education system. Our education system is not meant to inform us how to protect one of the most important things that we possess, which is our private property rights. Lawyers do not protect people's rights. By and large, most lawyers are following judicial process, court process, rules of court. In my case, I asked several local lawyers to assist me, not represent me, but assist me in getting rid of these 2 traffic violations. Well, I wasn't conducting traffic. I was exercising my right under the Constitution, which the Supreme Court has already ruled on, that I have the right to travel in a private conveyance on the public roadways. But they threaten you that if you don't have a license, they're going to throw you in jail. If you don't have a motor vehicle that's registered, they're going to either throw you in jail or confiscate your vehicle, which is a convoluted system of contracts that you have entered into unknowingly, that you didn't have to, but it was under threat of force. Under contractual law, that's a fraudulent contract. But they assume you knew about the contract, you agreed to do it, you agreed to abide by the contract, and until you forcefully refute that assumption and unsnare yourself from all the sticky spider web that has ensnared you through your life and even through your parents when they registered you at birth. You did not have to get registered at birth. You did not have to have a Social Security number. And by the way, the Social Security system is, even though it's we have a branch of it here in the United States, the rules and regulations are basically created in the United States. And that ought to blow you away. And we have a minister in the U.S. Embassy, not the American Embassy, but the United States Embassy, that signs off on the regulations that they're going to apply in the United States. The United Kingdom, I think, has something like 14 countries that they basically administrate or set up the regulations for.
Yeah.
It's a mind.
Paul, let me ask you this. This is fascinating. Hold on one second. Would you adjust that camera so I'm centered, on the thing, please? Also, what I find fascinating is that I appreciate what you're saying. I'm not certain if I fully understand it, but and that's not your fault. That's my fault because I'm not as schooled as you are in this field. So, and I don't mean that disparaging. I'm talking about myself for a minute. But I don't disagree with anything that you are saying, because basically the Constitution talks about inalienable rights, and all of these laws and restrictions and licensing agreements and whatever speak volumes against inalienable rights. So I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate what you're saying. But how do we go from where we have evolved to where we should be? How do we unfold this, and how do we become free citizens again? Do we have to wait for a hellacious catastrophe to occur where we sort of clean the slate and start over again? Because if that ever happens, all I can see is martial law and losing all our rights, not going back to a more free society. And quite frankly, I'm quite concerned about my sons and daughters and grandchildren, and what kind of world they're going to live in. I was born about the same time you. I was born in '43. I'm going to be, by the way, it's my birthday this month. You can wish me happy birthday. I'm at the young age of 73, and I remember when things were the law was the same, but we were relatively free compared to today. Today, it's no semblance of what it was back in the 40s and 50s. But where do you see this going, and how do we revert back?
The people that run the government and the think tanks, the ultra wealthy, the historical royalty lines, they are very worried that some really bad things happen. And what's going on with all these laws they're passing and all the nonsense going on, well, the reason why some of the largest banks that have been caught doing criminal behavior at the highest levels of finance, they get a fine. No one goes to jail. And almost no one is even brought up before a judge. Now, you steal a candy bar, they're going to throw you in the tank and make you go through a trial, and they're probably going to find you guilty. And you'll fall on the mercy of the court. But the courts, especially the local courts, do not recognize the Constitution.
Right. Paul, please, I hate to interrupt. Could you just hold on? We have a caller on line 1. Could we take that call now before they? Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Line 1, you're on the air. Your question or comment, please.
Oh, hello. I'm Suzette from California.
Hi. Thank you for calling
Hi.
Liberty Talk Radio. Your question or comment, please.
Hi, Joe. I was wondering, California itself is a good example of what you're talking about, because the people of California have voted against the gay lesbian rights, and when it was taken to the Supreme Court, they had overturned what the people of California had voted on. And I didn't understand how they could do that, because they're just supposed to rule whether or not it's constitutional or not, but they stepped on the California sovereign rights of the people to vote, because it was put up for a vote, and then it was overturned. How does that work?
Yeah, well, you would think that's in violation of people's inalienable rights. How you choose to live your life without inflicting any pain or punishment on anyone else, or any undue burden on anyone else. It's the state telling you exactly how to live your life. But I'm going to Paul to answer that question to see how far off I am. Paul, what about that?
Well, these are all, when you get into actual law cases, they're actually kind of complex, and various reasons. But, when the state of California or a local, group of people wants to establish a new law, it becomes, regulation, a statute. It has been most things the Supreme Court decides on don't have to do with the Constitution. They have to do with other systems of law. You have, under the Constitution, you have freedom of association. I don't care whether you're gay, you're transgender, or what. What you do in your own private life is your own private business. There is no prohibition in the Constitution against private behavior that injures no one. But statutes, regulations, and codes are a whole different thing. I mean, we had, the miscegenation laws, that they were really statutes. They were in violation of the Constitution. But if you are a statutory citizen, because of all these sticky contracts with all kinds of adhesion clauses that you never knew about, you've agreed to abide by all the statutes, regulations, and codes. And if there's a statute against it, as a as a fictional entity, which the government assumes you are, you have contracted with them, and you become like a corporation that they get to regulate. You must obey all those statutes, regulations, and codes that you don't think should apply to you. Well, they really don't in your human form, but they've attached a commercial, contractual, entity to you that you, as a human being, entered into. And you, unfortunately, it's very difficult to refute the assumption that you knowingly agreed to do it. But it was fraudulently put on you because the contract has to be fully explained. You must agree to the contract with full knowledge of forethought. And you know what you have to give up to engage in the contract and what the benefit of the contract is. Well, the benefit of the contract can be jail. It can be a fine. That's your benefit for violating the contract.
Well, it was the whole discussion of whether or not to recognize the gay marriage against a man and a woman marriage, the traditional marriage sense. And so,
Well, see,
and
you're going
it
to
doesn't
the
say anything in the Constitution about that either.
no, you're going to the government to get a license. That they've convinced people in this country that having a marriage license is the most important thing that two people can do to form a family. But a marriage license does not create a family, it creates a business partnership. And if you have a child, that's a product that also gets regulated. So it's a false construct. People that are gay, let them do whatever they want. Let heterosexual people do whatever they want. Consenting adults should be able to live their life and be left alone. And
absolutely.
But to make the state recognize it takes political power to create these regulations, statutes, and codes. But if I were someone that was gay, knowing what I know, I would not want a marriage license, because then the government gets to regulate your business, your joint business. So that's kind of what it is, and you have to understand that the Supreme Court wouldn't be deciding on the law of the Constitution. They're talking about the law of the federal government, the federal corporation, and the states are subsidiaries of it. It's commercial law, it's corporate law, it's statutes, regulations, and codes, which are not meant for human beings unless you contract.
Yes. Caller, let me ask you this, caller. When you went to grade school, and high school, were you taught any of this? Was any of this discussed at all regarding your constitutional rights, your inalienable rights in school?
Well, they were,
yes.
No, I'm asking, excuse me, Paul, I'm asking our caller, please.
Yes, they did, and that's what kind of bothers me as an adult. And actually, I've seen the transition from the United States going from being recognized as a republic to a democracy. We are not a democracy. And I saw how that kind of crept in and has changed the way people think, because now most people are under the impression that it is the government that they must depend on. It is the government that will take care of them. It is the government that they live under and that rule. And that is not the way it was intended to be as far as the United States. And so I graduated in 1985 from high school. And so prior to that, those teachings were prevalent in class. And now they don't have those. And people are being led to believe that we are democracy. And it just drives me nuts.
Oh, so you're saying that those courses that actually discuss your rights under the Constitution as it was intended are no longer being taught in the schools in California?
Correct.
Wow.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I was quite surprised that they were doing that even 20, 30 years ago, because I don't ever recall that being taught anywhere, not in the state of Oklahoma. And Oklahoma's a relatively free state, if you will, compared to some of the other states. In fact, compared to California, it's an incredibly free state. It doesn't have the rules and regulations that California has. And let me ask you this, Carl, then one other question then. Do you think this also applies to drugs, that if I want to take whatever drug, I want to ingest anything or inject something in my body, I should have the right to do so?
As a person, a sovereign person, a national person, yes.
Okay.
But that's a tough one, because it's a bad thing to do, and there are other connections to it as far as the other agencies that are involved with people who get violent and so forth. So there has to be some government, but it has to be limited, and I think that as far as our inalienable rights go, we are responsible for ourselves, or we're supposed to be responsible for ourselves.
All righty. I just want your opinion.
That's where that falls in line.
Paul, would you like to make a comment on that?
Well, yeah. The comment is there's no prohibition that I'm aware of in the Constitution of the United States that prohibits somebody, taking a drug. But they are statutes, regulations, and codes, and they are enforced by force of arms. And but some of the legitimacy of the laws supposedly comes from the Commerce Clause, which allowed the federal government to regulate interstate commerce and as well as the sea and the air and all the federal territories. And the federal territories are not the individual nation states. Those are there's a territorial state, and then there is a corporate state. And the state of Massachusetts, I'm waiting, for my legal counsel to get me the documents from Delaware. It is a corporation. It's not a government of the people. It's a government. It's the leadership of a corporation that has rules, regulations, statutes, and codes. And you have to understand that this has been put upon us for over 100 years. If you look at, and people are always screaming about civil rights, I demand my civil rights. You're abusing my civil rights. Well, people don't understand that civil rights are granted by government. Unalienable rights come from the Creator, and they are recognized in the Constitution as inviolate. But if you leave the constitutional zone and enter the corporate zone, you don't have those rights. You have limited rights, which are outlined in the 19th Amendment, which was the governance of Washington, D.C., and the 10 square mile territory of it. And they're trying to get every single human being in this country under the jurisdiction of the federal government and its subsidiaries, rather than being citizens of the Constitution.
Right. Caller, I hope after that you've got yourself some good answers and you're not clinically depressed at the same time.
That's where the citizens and the national resident comes in, as far as they're really impressing upon people to be a good citizen. If you're a good citizen, then you're of the government and not of yourself and as a creator. And
well, you can
differentiate the two.
Yeah,
you can be a citizen of the republic. You can be a citizen of the republic and a citizen of the government simultaneously. I didn't have a chance to get in so many of the things that I wanted to, but nonetheless, this is a very valuable show. But just to show you. You should read the 14th Amendment, because the 14th Amendment does not have human beings with unalienable rights. The 14th Amendment to the Constitution has subjects, just as the monarchs have subjects. The monarchs are the lawgivers, just like Congress, when they're acting for the District of Columbia, which is the United States Corporation. They are acting for that, but that corporation is trying to extend, and has been very successful in extending its tentacles through the obfuscation of the law, false contracts, mind control, so you have no idea what's going on. Government schools are not for the purpose of educating you to be the most valuable citizen of the republic. They're educating you to be a valuable citizen of the state, the corporate state.
Yeah. Paul, excuse me, Paul, I need to interrupt you just for a minute. I apologize for that. And caller, please, you do not have to hang up. You can stay on for the rest of the program if you'd like, but we must stop for about 1 minute for station identification, or else people are going to start beating up on me, and I don't want to get hit, okay? So would you hold on, caller? Can you stay on the line for us for a minute?
Thank you.
Okay, hold on. And Paul, stay with us. Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
Political talk derived from a historical perspective. Not always palatable, but good food for thought. Pure libertarian talk with host Joe Cristiano. LibertyTalkRadio.com.
Express Test is your go-to company for on-site occupational health testing services. That's right, we said on-site. That means we will meet you at your facility for a free health and occupational safety consultation. Express Test specializes in hearing conservation, respiratory protection, and employee safety. We can help you establish viable programs tailored to your business and employee needs. For your free consultation, call 918-743-2929 or visit us at expresstest.com. That's 918-743-2929 or expresstest.com.
Ranch Acres Audiology is about caring, about getting the most out of life, about personal attention.
Sometimes helping someone with their hearing is really helping them with more than just hearing. That's the goal of my practice. That's what my goal has been for 20 years.
You're invited to attend our next free Lunch and Learn seminar. Call us today, 918-749-7711.
This isn't your typical talk radio show. This is Liberty. Liberty Talk Radio.
Welcome back, everyone, to Liberty Talk Radio. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano. We're broadcasting from our studio in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to around the world. We have a caller on the line. Caller, are you still there? Caller, are you still there? I guess we lost her. Did we lose our caller? Paul, are you still there?
I'm still here, and I'd like to just sort of follow that line. Actually, two very brief quotes from a couple of cases involving around state, national, and United States citizens. So this is United States versus Anthony, as well as the slaughterhouse cases of the United States, United States versus Crookshank. Those are old cases, granted, but cases haven't been overturned. They are established law. So it says the amendment, meaning the 14th Amendment, recognized that an individual can be a citizen of one of the several states without being a citizen of the United States. That sounds crazy to most people, but this is federal law. The case is Cross for the Board of Supervisors. This is in 1966, which says both before and after the 14th Amendment to the federal Constitution, it has not been necessary for a person to be a citizen of the United States in order to be a citizen of his state. So just because you were born in Massachusetts, people in Massachusetts assume they're United States citizens without knowing what the term in law United States refers to. And it can mean several different things. It does not mean what most people in using common language, street language, think it means. So when you sign everything, I swear under the pains of penalties of perjury, I am a United States citizen. Well, you just swore that you're a citizen of the government, the corporation. No, you're entrapped. When you register to vote, you sign a voter registration card, and you swear you're a U.S. citizen. Okay? Now that you've agreed to that, you are delegating your power of attorney to those who get elected, even if they're not who you wanted. And most of the time, they're either not who you wanted, or the person that got in there that you wanted turned out to be a liar, and he's not doing what he said he was going to do. But since you delegated your power of attorney to him and agreed to abide by all the laws of this federal corporation, no matter what you're up with, you have a contractual basis to abide by it. So I've revoked my my voter registration, and I'm just trying to scratch the surface on how to untangle myself from other things. Unfortunately, at my age, and I am now receiving Social Security, which is a huge contractual crap. So is using the Federal Reserve currency, which is not the United States of America. It's a private corporation, and
right.
we don't even know who the people that own it are, you know. So, and they don't have to publicize.
That's true.
Yeah, they don't have to publicize any of their stuff. So when we use their money and we use their banking system, unless we make a reservation of our rights in advance, well, we're agreeing to everything. When you sign that signature card in the bank, from what I understand, there's like a 600 or 700 page contract. They just say, oh, we just need a copy of your signature for our records so that we can, you know, compare on checks. Well, I don't believe that that's correct. I think that there's a huge contract. They never tell you about it. They've defrauded you. Also, banks never lend you anything. When you take out a loan, they don't lend you anything. It's a fiction. They're lending you nothing of substance. They're just converting your private credit into a check of debt obligations. But that's a whole other that's a whole other thing.
Paul, how do you see this unwinding? Eventually, there'll be so many rules, regulations. Everyone is breaking the law. Everyone is a criminal in one way, shape, or form. This causes unrest from, for example, if you're anywhere from just selling lemonade on a street corner illegally because you don't have a license to being a drug dealer on a street corner, and everyone in between. Eventually, this is going to unwind. People are going to get fed up, but they're not going to have any knowledge as to what their true rights are and whether or not they've given any rights up in the first place. So how do you see this unwinding? I don't see us continually traveling down this path. And the conclusion being we have in America a free country of individuals with inalienable rights. I see that just totally wiped off the map, but we're going to have something very different, and it doesn't seem to be very pretty either.
No, well, we have to begin to take back the title of this talk is Take Back Your Own Personal Power. And knowledge is power. If you are ignorant,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we lost you, Paul. What happened? Uh-oh.
Internet.
Oh.
Yep, there is connection problem.
Okay, Paul, we can't hear him either, can we?
No.
Uh-oh, we just lost
I don't hear
Paul.
anything.
Yeah, we just lost him. Uh-oh.
you back?
Yeah, Paul, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know what happened, but
All right. Do we have?
picture one.
Got the audio.
All right, we have the audio and not the video. It's okay. Let's just continue with the audio only.
All right, so let's see.
We have a picture of you up there, but we don't have you moving around, so that's okay. We only have about 10 minutes to go anyway, so.
Okay, I lost my train of thought there.
Taking back the cities.
Taking back your personal power. First of all, I went through many steps, legal steps of notification of what my rights were, and constitutional cases, and official notification process to all kinds of government officials, including my local chief of police, the governor, the attorney general of the state of Massachusetts, the head of the state police, my town government, of what my rights were. And nobody ever responded to anything except for one guy who actually missed the deadline of his third reply was due, which he finally gave me a reply from the Department of Motor Vehicles. He said he understood nothing of what I was saying, but just reinforced that the state of Massachusetts had the right to regulate motor vehicles and trailers, which I never called into question. people think that they're driving around in a motor vehicle. Well, a motor vehicle under United States code and of the law is a commercial conveyance, whereas an automobile is a private conveyance unless it's used for the transportation of goods or passengers, and a passenger is someone that pays to be transported on the public roadways. Otherwise, U.S. codes, an automobile is a consumer good, and you are merely utilizing your consumer good to exercise your right to liberty, which the Supreme Court has affirmed as your right to travel from one state to the next, to travel for freedom of association is a guaranteed right. It is not a privilege, and no license is necessary. In fact, no state may convert a right to a privilege and issue a license and charge a fee for that which is a right.
But how do you translate that, Paul, into going through a red light and not being eligible, basically, for a traffic violation?
Okay. Well, first of all, if you're operating or if you're using this thing without any license and you're relying solely upon your rights under the Constitution, unless you've caused harm or even mayhem and screeching traffic and disturbing the peace, you have not committed any violation.
Right. Well, you haven't committed a crime, that's for sure. You broke a rule of the corporate state.
You broke a code. Okay. Show me how I injured the code. But the code is a commercial part of a regulation. It's not a right regulation. So if you caused no harm, caused no public disturbance, they have no right to stop you, demand that you assist them with their investigation by handing them a license, which you were not using, and your registration, and you were not operating a motor vehicle, you're using your private conveyance, your consumer good, to travel about for whatever purposes. So it basically is a contract. I'm having my legal counsel, I'm paying him to write up a 3 different kind of scenario when you are confronted by police demanding your license, registration, and proof of insurance. Because if you are operating in a commercial capacity, you are required, because it's a privilege to use the public highways for profit. You must have a license to do that. Okay, but if you're not doing that,
not a government entity in itself there, so there's a whole license and registration thing would never come into play, or shouldn't come into play, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
That's
Paul, would we have been a better in a better state than we are today if the anti-federalists won their position and we had a confederation of states that were not subject to a centralized organization or corporation, if you will, but just a federation of states with an agreement that we would coordinate activities and be a country, of a federation of states? Would have been better off that way?
Well, I don't really have an informed opinion about so many things change. But what's happened is the citizens have slept on their rights. The people of this country are the guardians of their rights. And when government abuses their privilege of being employed by the people have the right, and I would argue they have the duty to object and file charges. Now, all these public officials will claim they have immunity from prosecution. Okay, but if they violate their job description, and if they violate their oath of office, you can sue them individually. I did not sue the 3 police officers that were involved. with trying to regulate my behavior. But I could have filed charges against the chief of police for knowingly filing false charges against me. He knew I had knew I had no criminal intent because he had ample notice ahead of time to understand that I believed that I had a right to do what I was doing, and he never said one word to the contrary. So if I had known more in court, when I got before a so-called judge, and these are not judges, they're administrators. They're administrating the uniform commercial codes and the statutes, regulations, and codes. They do not, at every turn, if they can avoid recognizing anything about the Constitution, they will ignore it. Well, one of the judges, and if I had known better, I would have objected and said, "Sir, you are practicing law from the bench. You are arguing for the prosecution. Now recuse yourself, or I will file charges against you." Also, when you object and demand that a court prove it has jurisdiction, the court is required to prove it has jurisdiction. I never entered the court for any other purpose than jurisdictional purposes, but they ignored me with 8 different people on the bench out of 9. They ignored everything I said about their duty to prove that they had jurisdiction. All right? My claim was I was operating on the jurisdiction of the Constitution of the United States, and I had entered all kinds of proof that the Supreme Court had ruled that doing was legitimate. They also, it's a Supreme Court ruling that they are required to prove they have jurisdiction, and when they don't do that, they are in contempt of a higher court.
Well, Paul, I think I'm gonna write your name in for President of the United States. You don't mind, do you?
Talk about a headache, but I don't want to be a president of the United States. I would like to aid the people of the United States of America. The federal government,
right? I understand,
is a lost cause. Most of the people that are involved at the higher ends really are committing. They're committing treason,
right,
against the American people. They have conspired to deprive us of our rights, and they have profited by it tremendously, and it goes on. So voting for the ones that are chosen to vote for by the big political parties is not going to get what you want. You have to start to educate, and you have to start to withdraw your financial support as much as possible. Try not to use a credit card. You're contributing to the profits.
God, I have to give everything up, Paul. I'm getting depressed, but I understand what you're saying. By the way, we're about out of time. Caller, I'd like you to do me a favor. If you would send me a mailing address to comments@libertytalkradio.com. I'd like to send you a little gift, token of our appreciation for you hanging in there so long during this broadcast. Of course, that's voluntary. It's not required. Comments@libertytalkradio.com. We'd like to send you a little gift. Appreciate you very much calling in and listening to Liberty Talk Radio. And Paul, right now, I'd like to give you the last minute to wrap things up before we get knocked off the air altogether.
Okay. My suggestion is turn off your television set. It is the greatest tool for mind control.
Absolutely.
Turn off the mainstream obnoxious radio,
right?
And the television that just wants to sell you products, keep you sitting on your sofa munching factory-produced poisonous food or food without any nutritional value, and start to understand what's going on. Stop using your credit cards at all possible points. There's talk about they want to eliminate cash. That will be total control. If they cut off your assets because they didn't like something you did, you're helpless.
Right.
You're done.
Yeah.
You're begging.
That's right.
So take your money out of the bank as much as you think is safe to carry. Don't leave much money in the bank, and use cash to pay for everything.
Right. I agree.
Start to learn about the difference between, start to do some research. I give out literature to people all the time. I've given out probably 800 copies of the Constitution, and I have a packet of information that I give out freely to people that come into my store if they're interested in taking it. And, 4.5 years ago, 4 years ago, when I started to do this, almost no one wanted to look or touch at what I was handing out. Now almost everybody takes it.
That's great.
So,
Paul, we're about out of time, Paul. We're going to get knocked off the air. If you can just wrap it up in the next 10 seconds, okay?
Well, rise up, do your part, do it peacefully, and be smart.
Okay. I'd like to make one comment, if I can have a second or two, is that, our call had mentioned that she was concerned about drugs because it was bad for you. Most people die because of high levels of saturated fat. That's what's killing America, not drugs. So if we're going to make drugs illegal, then anything that has a saturated fat in it also should be illegal also. And then the government can tell us exactly what to eat. Paul, thank you very much for being on our program. We do hope that you will accept our invitation to return at a later date. Paul, are you out there? I guess Paul's hung up. Okay, very good. Folks, this is the end of today's broadcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for the financial support. We'd like to thank you for listening, and you can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends, and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground. Until next time, this is you've been listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well. Stay tuned.